Hello, and welcome back to the Mo Money Podcast. This is episode 255, and I am your host, Jessica Morehouse. Welcome back to the show. So excited to share this episode with you. As I teased in last week's episode, I have my friend Cait Flanders back on the show. She has been on the show. Well, this is her fourth time, so she is now the reigning champ of being on the show the most of anybody. Yeah. She was on episode number 3. So she was my first real guest because I was episode number 1, just like me talking. Episode 2 was my husband, just so I can kind of ease into it. And then episode 3 was Cait. And she's been on the show twice after that. And this is her 4th episode. If you want to check out all of those episodes very easily, the best thing that you can do is just go to the show notes for this episode, jessicamorehouse.com/255. I'll include links for all of them. But in case you're not familiar with Cait, well, she was actually one of the first personal finance bloggers that I started reading back in 2010. Oh my gosh, 10 years ago. What? She is an author, a podcaster, and also a traveler, which you'll kind of get the sense of that in her latest book, Adventures in Opting Out. But her first book, which is a bestseller, is called The Year of Less, and it came out in 2018. I had her on the show to talk about it, so make sure to check out that episode. But how it kind of all started, just little Cole's notes. I'm like looking on her website. I'm like, why am I looking on her website? I know who she is, and I can just tell you what her bio is. So she started her personal finance blog called, am I going to remember it? Oh yeah, Blonde on a Budget. That's what it was called. It was called Blonde on a Budget. And it was to kind of document her debt-free journey. She had, gone to debt and she wanted to dig herself out of it. And so she documented her kind of journey and her thoughts and tips on her blog. And then once she paid off all of her debt, then she kind of realized she needed something else to work towards because, and I think this is so important, is a lot of people just focus on debt repayment, but they don't think about what happens after. And that's exactly what she experienced. She was like, what do I do now? It's very easy to get back into debt when all you're used to is just debt. And so she did this kind of crazy thing called a shopping ban. She basically had a, very interesting system of not spending that much money. Basically, besides her necessities, she just did not shop because that was kind of her trigger or her kind of, issue. That's why she got into debt in the first place. And I think she actually did it for 2 solid years, and it definitely, like, the whole story of her doing the shopping ban and paying off all this debt kind of went viral, and she got a book deal, and she created her first book, The Year of Less, and it came out in 2018. And that really was kind of an amazing book, a memoir kind of her journey and her life. So you can kind of understand the background of how she got into debt and why she started the shopping ban, how she really changed her life completely. So it was more intentional and just, she can feel good about her money for once, basically. And then once she came out with that book, then she was like, what are we doing now? And she started doing more self-discovery, doing more traveling, and, again, kind of pursuing this life that is all about, minimalism and intentionality. And that's where she got the idea for her second book, Adventures in Opting Out, kind of basically a book about how to live differently, but in a way that makes you feel the most fulfilled, which I think, it's just such a great book. I know you're going to love it. And you're going to love this interview with Cait, but it's just like such great timing because it really is the book. If you have been thinking a lot about what am I doing with my life? Is this actually what I want? Am I happy? What kind of direction am I going in? Where do I want to go? This is a great book to kind of continue that conversation and make you think about a few things. And she's actually inspired a lot of people with her books, both of books, to make some big changes in her life, which we talk about in this interview. So anyways, enough of that. Let's get to that interview with Cait. But before I do that, just want to share a few words about this episode's sponsor. This episode of the Mo Money Podcast is supported by Passive. If you've been a longtime listener of the show, then you know that I am a big fan of passive investing. I'm also a big promoter of DIY investing because you can save a ton of money on fees, which over the course of decades can make you thousands of dollars richer. Well, if you're a DIY investor and are looking to ditch those homemade spreadsheets, there's a new portfolio management tool called Passive you'll definitely want to check out. Not only that, Passive is free to all Questrade clients. Passive helps you keep a balanced portfolio in your brokerage account with ease. It's like being your own personalized robo-advisor. Simply choose how you want to invest your money, and Passive will help you stay on target with just one click. Speaking of clicks, go to passive.com/momoney to learn more or to sign up for an account. And that's PASSIV. Once again, to learn more about how Passive can up your DIY investing game, visit passive.com/momoney. Welcome back to the Mo Money Podcast, Cait. I feel like this might be number 4. I think because you were so remember, let's take it back in case anyone listening is new. You were episode 3. You were like my first real guest because it was a solo episode with me. Then I had my husband, and then you were my first like real guest, which is wild. 2015.
In your parents' basement.
In my parents' basement.
That's amazing.
Oh my God. That's so embarrassing. But yeah, it was in my parents' basement. And I feel like we were recording, and sometimes like parents would be like walking upstairs, and I'm like, shut up.
We've come a long way, my friend.
We certainly have come a long way. Oh my gosh. And then of course why were you on the show a couple other times? I think once before your book came out, and then when The Year Less came out, and now you have a second book. So here we go, number 4.
Okay, great.
Wild. I know. It's crazy. It is so crazy. And and also like, damn, you have a second book already. Like that just seems, I feel like we were just talking about your first book, and now here we are with your second. How exciting. And personally finishing it, loved it. Great time in my view. Like it's like the perfect, like I was reading it and I felt calm, and everything in this world is making me super anxious. And that's like anxiety has been like the theme of 2020 for me in my life. And I'm sure lots of people can agree. Your book made me so relaxed, and also just like fantasizing about opting out and traveling. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a world I would like to live in.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, the calmness is that's nice feedback.
Yeah, it put me at ease. Like I was honestly sitting on my couch having a tea. You know, the leaves are changing outside, reading your book. I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, so it's a great book, I think, for this kind of season where we're still dealing with this weird pandemic world, but also we want to start thinking about the future and travel, and just like and also rethinking about what is our life. Have you been getting from people who've read the book being like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed to hear at this moment in time?
Yeah. And I will say it has also been followed up occasionally with like, and here's a drastic thing that I did.
Oh, and you're like, oh, are they good or bad? Like, and I quit my job, and you're like, oh, okay. Do you need that job though?
That was the first message I got. Yeah.
Well, hopefully they're like, had an emergency fund and they made some plans.
She sent me the best message. It was a girl in Australia. She said she read it, and the very next day she went in and quit her job. And so at first I'm reading, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in a pandemic. What are you doing? But
yeah.
But then she said, your first book helped me pay off all of my debt and build up a 6 months emergency fund. And she said, so reading this just gave me like that extra push to take the next step for something else that I want. And yeah, I've had friends say that they've broken up with their partners.
Reading it, you're like, yeah, I don't like you. And also the pandemic really makes you rethink, do I like you?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, when I say partners, I'm like, multiple friends have broken up with their partners and shared it with me after.
Oh, damn.
And saying, yeah, your book was like the final push. I'm like, oh my God.
Opting out of this relationship. Oh my God.
Yeah. But no, I have gotten that feedback. I think that, yeah, we are definitely, and it feels really important to preface it, like for people who have not been too negatively impacted by COVID, I think those of us in that position have really sat with our feelings for the first time in a very long time. And in this pause, just started to question some things, or question like, oh, like maybe there are pieces of this that I don't hate. What would I want to bring forward? Or no, I hate all of this. So what are all the things I want different as we can slowly transition to something different? Yeah, there's been a lot of that, which was weird. I mean, you don't write something ever to be, or I didn't write it thinking it would ever be more timely. But I remember actually having incredible anxiety at the start of the pandemic, because we were like finishing edits, sending it off to print. And I had so much anxiety. And I remember saying to my editor, like, how dare I release this book in a time like when people are dying and we don't know what's going to happen. And she said, like, let's just carry on. And if it still feels okay, we can publish it. And if we need to push it, that's completely fine. Like, it's not a big deal. And she was like, actually, I think yours is a book that has become more relevant since you wrote it. So, which you can't plan for.
Yeah. Yeah. This definitely, you can't plan for it. And so it's kind of like interesting, but, good timing. And for me, yeah, I've been spending 2020 as that year to kind of hit pause and reassess and also just feel and think a lot more because we've had so many personal conversations and I'm like, I feel like I'm always go, go, go. And I know in the middle, I'm like, I know this isn't how I want to live my life, but I don't know how to stop. And this kind of forced everyone to you have to stop. You have to, like, everyone, the world stopped. And it's never really happened in our lifetime, at least, that the world had to stop and kind of take a moment and think about what's going on and what do you want. And what I appreciated with your book, and you kind of mentioned this throughout the book, because, I read self-help books and I think lots of other people, there's so many out there and yours is different in that it isn't like do this, do this, do this. And also this is the right way. And you weren't pushy about, like, your book isn't to be like, I want you to opt out or you need to opt out. It's more like, because it doesn't have to be a dramatic situation. Because even in your story that you share in the book, it's like, it's not dramatic. It's just, this is your life and this is what you're living. And I think that's what was relatable to me because I'm like, my life is not super exciting or dramatic. Most people's lives aren't super exciting and dramatic. And that's actually a good thing. That being said, we may want to change a few things or pivot. It doesn't have to be. And as much as I love Cheryl Strayed's Wild, love that book, we don't all need to quit everything and go on a huge hike. We don't need to do that in order to have a big life change that'll be positive and impactful down the road. It doesn't have to be this big, huge moment. It can be little things too.
Yeah. I think that it makes sense then just to sort of define what opting out is, which is, actually, even when we worked on the subtitle for the book and we settled on like leading an intentional life, but it also could have just been like a guide to changing paths in life, because that's really what it is. The reason opting out felt so important is because it's especially written for people who they are the first one that they know to make that choice. And so again, it doesn't have to be a big dramatic one, but just, yeah, if you're even the first person to say like, I'm not going to use social media anymore. Like if everyone else uses social media, people are kind of like, well, how do you do that? like, good luck with that.
Yeah. It's like, what is that about?
And people don't know what to do. And also you don't know what it's going to be like because you don't have anyone else to look to, but they can be bigger, or they can be like, I've had a lot of friends in sort of the FI space be like, this totally resonates for us, right? Because there's so many people who don't understand what they're doing, or they're definitely the first, in their family or friend group to go that route. So it could be bigger, and it could just be something that affects you socially more. Like I talk about not drinking. Not drinking is certainly an opt-out in a way. I'm almost 8 years. Well, yeah, actually when this comes out, I'll be about 8 years sober. And yeah, just like that's a real opt-out, especially to do in your 20s. I think it's a little less complicated in your 30s, but when you're in your 20s and you decide to stop drinking, that's a big thing. So
oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you talk a lot about your sobriety and drinking the book, which I appreciate, because I feel like that's a conversation more and more people are having, because it has been normalized for, generations. Like drinking, it's no big deal. I'm like, but we know it's a big deal, especially, for me, when I hear of people now that I'm in my 30s and they're acting or partying the way they did in their 20s, I'm like, that's not normal. Like we gave you a pass in your 20s for whatever reason that society just does. In your 30s, you need to look internally. That's a problem. It's not cute anymore. It's actually kind of scary, and I'm scared for you. And so
No,
Yeah, but
no.
that's, I mean, that has nothing to do with what we're going. But, like that's really resonated with me. And even for me, it's like I was never a big drinker, but definitely in my circle in my 20s, it was very normal for people just to drink lots of beers. Now I'm like, me and my husband, especially, we just have lots more conversations about like, let's maybe not have any alcohol really in the house, or I'm not going to drink this week or this month or whatever. And again, like we don't drink a lot. It's not like we drink more than like 2 drinks or whatever. We're not getting drunk, but it's like we realize, especially during this time where we're at home and we're feeling a lot more and really reassessing things. We're like, I don't feel good physically, mentally. I'm tired. I have trouble sleeping. Like that part about your friend who has trouble sleeping. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like my husband's like, he's had a lot of trouble sleeping and he doesn't drink really at all anymore. And he's had a lot. I mean, he's like a grandpa and goes to bed at like 9 and then wakes up at like 6. And I'm like, okay, so this isn't, now we're on different paths. Cause I'm like, I like to go to bed late and sleep in. But yeah, it's just like, this is the year to really think about what do we want in life and what do we want to. And I think also when you were working on this book, when you said opting out, I always kind of thought it was a taking away, but not necessarily. It just means like going in a different direction. And I think that's also really important because it's not about just taking away. Like maybe it is, but it could just be like adding something new in a different direction.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think like that's probably what 2020 has looked like for me, or I'd say the second half. I'd say the first half was the anxiety half.
I was just panic for 6
Yeah.
months.
And then like as we've settled into it, I'm at a much different place right now where I'm asking myself questions that I've never really asked myself before. Like I don't really have any like celebration rituals or just like rituals in general in my life. What would it look like to be someone who had a bit more of that in my life? And I'm not talking about like big things. I'm like, what if I was someone who on Friday nights, like that was the one night of the week I got takeout. And then it's like this nice thing to look forward to on Friday nights, right? Like how great is that? Or right now I'm doing something for November and December where on Sunday nights I'm making dinner and watching a holiday movie. Also because I'm just like, I need more joy in my life.
Oh my gosh, I'm all about the holidays this year. Well, also, we're not going back home for Christmas, and so we're staying here. And we're getting a new tree. I'm going to decorate. Like, I'm going to go so crazy with everything Christmas this year because I need some joy and some magic in my life.
Yes. Yes. And so these are little things that I'm just, like you said, like adding. I was not the kind of person who ever did this stuff before. Or like I loved holiday movies. I watch all kinds of holiday movies, but to make this sort of like intentional practice of, wow, what would it be like to have something to look forward to every week? I've not been that person before, and that's been neat. So this is new for me. They're very little, I guess, opt-ins or something, but yeah, like it's been really nice.
Mm-hmm. And it also, because this is a personal finance podcast, I realize that everybody, but Cait, she's been on the show so many times. You do talk about money in the book, which I think is, someone who likes to kind of talk about like the practical side of things. I think a lot of people don't think that they can make a change or change past because of their financial situation. But as you've kind of proved, well, you used to be in debt and you got at it. Like it's not about a drastic immediate change. Sometimes these things are a progression. So for you to be able to kind of have the flexibility to travel and live in different places, you had to do some work before, and getting out of debt, living, more intentionally and living on less, hence the first book. And it's a progression. And now you're able to kind of, so it's like you were always kind of on this path, but it can take years. I think sometimes when you read a self-help book, it seems like, oh, I should expect an immediate change. Like, but we know what, that's not life. Life is like, it takes a while. It can take years for you to really see where you're going. You might just be in the thick of your woods. And I also really, like, I'm not a hiker. And I feel like when I was reading your book, I'm like, I feel like at one point you did ask me to go on a hike and then I bailed.
I think so.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe that's someone else. Anyone who's ever asked me for a hike, I've definitely bailed. I hate hiking, but I really enjoy how you weaved in just like kind of the progression of when you're on a hike. There's I don't know what the terms are. Peak. There's the peak. There's the the base, I don't know, but there's a little
You're
nice
amazing.
there's a nice little graphic that shows you, and you really tie everything into it. And I actually, as someone who hates hiking, I'm like, oh, hiking sounds so nice now. But also, I really like how you just kind of weave that all together. I feel like everyone can kind of relate to it. But yeah, you talk about so many amazing things in the book. I have so many, I don't have so many questions, but there's so many little things that I want to talk about. Especially what's so interesting is like I was talking with you while you were writing the book. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when you went on that trip with Kara. That's fun. And just like the different, people you were able to meet on all your travels. I want, first, I think we haven't even touched on this. What inspired you to write a book about this? Because the first book, it seemed like this is kind of, it makes a lot of sense for you to write The Year of Less, because this was your journey. You were documenting it on your blog for years and years and years. Everyone kind of expected like, oh yeah, so this fills in lots of gaps. This is something new, something kind of familiar. This is totally something different that I feel like you haven't necessarily shared at all. What kind of inspired you?
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me so happy. I've had a few people actually, but I had someone send me a really nice note at the beginning saying that she read the book and the first thing she noticed was sort of like my growth as a writer. And I thought that's amazing. And as a writer, like that's incredible feedback on its own. But what helped me come up with the idea for the book was two things. Like one was all of the events that I did around the Year of Less. I was really paying attention to, like, not in the first few events, but I did about 20 like in person, like, at a bookstore or a library or things like that. So I did about 20 events, and I noticed in all of them, I was asked the same kind of question at every single event, which is always like, or along the lines of, did you lose anyone? Did you lose any family or friends? Did people stop hanging out with you? How did your social life change? A lot around like, what does your family think? And those were, it was funny. Like now I think back and I wouldn't have expected questions like that for something like, oh, I'm going to not shop for a year, which is what that first book was about.
I know. I'm just like, why would anyone be like, I don't want to hang out with you because you don't shop or you don't spend as much money as you used to. But I guess we're also in a little bit of a, we're in a personal finance bubble where it's like, well, everyone's sort of like that. So I'm like, I guess that makes sense. If you're just a regular person, you decide to make this big, I'm not shopping anymore. I think some people would be like, questions, or maybe I don't want to hang out with you anymore.
Yeah, well, and now that I've had more time to sit with it, I'm like, I get it. And also reflecting on that year, there were certainly, conversations that I was no longer a part of because people were talking about shopping. I remember specifically at the company that I used to work for, every time that I would go in for a visit, I feel like every single person's computer screen like had work, and then the next tab was shopping.
Wow.
Everybody. Like, so I'm like, it actually does make sense. Like we're kind of always browsing without even realizing it.
I browse all the time to this day. I don't buy, but I don't really buy because I am cheap. So
you got your eye out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's amazing. So yes, I got a lot of those questions. And what I noticed is that it wasn't until like maybe the fifth or sixth event, I noticed I didn't like my answer. Because I was not lying. I would say things like, well, your friendships might change a little, or like what I just said, you might have fewer things to add to certain conversations if people are talking about stuff like that. But I wasn't saying the really real thing, which is that, yeah, you are going to lose friends. Like if you decide to live differently in some way than everyone you currently are relating with, like you will lose some people. Yeah, you will. And that is a harder and more complicated answer to give. And also, I think in the first handful of events, I was just trying to be like positive and hopeful or something. And also, it's also a thing you sort of see in kind of the minimalism or simple living space in general, is just this messaging that like when you just like choose to live differently, like your life gets so much better. And I just thought, like, I was noticing I was uncomfortable. I just did not like that I was only saying this much right? And so I kept sitting with that, and then I would say like a little more at every event that I did after that. But I just kept thinking, like, why is it so hard to say the truth? Like, why is it so hard to just say the words that, like, yeah, you are going to lose people? And so that was one piece. And then the second piece of it, or how the analogy came into it, was literally that I was just out for a hike in Victoria. There's only a couple of like local mountains here. And I was just out for a hike. I've done this hike, I don't know, 200 times probably at this point, maybe more, like at this point, because it's a quick one. Like it's 25 minutes up kind of thing. And so, but even in that, even in saying that, it's a quick hike, there's still, what I noticed is how many times I was trying to talk myself out of it.
Like not doing the hike?
While I'm doing it, just to not finish.
Oh, that's me every hike, which is why I don't like it.
Yeah, no. And so I'm like, I would constantly, because I was out there by myself, so constantly like the voice in my head was just like, you can just turn around. Like you can just go home. No one's gonna know. No one's gonna have any idea. And then there's this other voice being like, it's like not that hard. Like you'll literally be done in 15 minutes. Why would you give up now? Like you're fine. Like you're totally fine. And I thought, like, I bet no one knows that this is what hiking feels like for me. Like, I bet everyone just assumes that I like love hiking and it's so easy.
Oh, I think when you look at hikers, you're like, they look like they're having a great time, but they don't, we have no idea. I'm like, of course they have an internal dialogue of like, oh, got to get through this, or, oh, this is kind of uncomfortable. Of course. Hiking's not like just fun all the time. Like it is physically hard to do.
Totally. And I'm like, and there are probably people who don't struggle that much with it. But I think that, so someone like me, I grew up with a lot of people pleasing and perfectionism and stuff like that. And I just genuinely think that for people like me who, you know, you have real fears of what it means to fail, like to try and fail, yeah, that it is harder even because then you're also having to add or undo all these like extra stories that are going on. And I just thought we just need to have more dialogue about this stuff. We need to talk about the fact that like self-help books are not and cannot just be like, here are the 10 steps and then everything gets better. And instead we need to say, yeah, like there are going to be ups and positives to this. Of course there are, because why else would you change? Like why else would you make a change if it was not going to be positive in some way? But also along with the positives, there are going to be negatives. They're like if you decide to change your life, like parts of your life are going to change and it may be negative, and we just need to add that. We need to add more honesty and more nuance. And so it's not just like black and white. Like we need to show the grayscale of what actually happens here.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, from the number of self-help books I've read, it is just focused on the positive, what you can achieve, how you can change your life, and it'll be so much better. Rarely do they talk about the natural things that are going to happen that may be kind of not so great, not so comfortable, and which is kind of, in my mind, almost dangerous, because then say you are on that journey to like, you know, improve yourself and something does happen, you think it's your fault. This isn't supposed to happen because it didn't talk about it. So I don't understand. You think it's a failure, but really it's actually just part of the natural, you know, kind of the hiking process of going up and down until you eventually get to the peak. It's not just a, you know, straight line. And that's the hardest part too, when you're trying to achieve something, no matter what it is. Like if you don't expect those like things to possibly happen, it's so much harder to overcome and not turn back.
Yes. I mean, like that sums it up so much is expecting, like if you decide that you're going to change some aspect of your life, you have to expect that it's not all going to be positive. And you have to get to a place where you can like tell yourself, I can deal with it. I don't know exactly what's coming. It may be awful, but like I trust that I can figure out how to deal with it. But just to add to what you were saying, like the biggest thing, or I think the biggest piece that's missing from self-help books in general is really the conversation that like we are all coming at these things from very different places, right? And so we cannot say that like what is going to work for me is going to work for you, because we don't know that. I can't say that. I can't tell anyone that like if they do exactly what I did, that's going to work out for, I don't even know if it's going to work out for me half the time. So
I know. And that's the thing. I in your book, you mentioned that you don't like saying, if I can do it, you can do it. And I've seen a lot more conversations like that this year, especially surrounding money. Because I mean, in the personal finance space, a lot of the people get the most attention for achieving something amazing and being like, you can do it too. And that always irritated me because I'm like, not necessarily. You don't know what my obligations are. You don't know how much income I have coming in. You don't know all these other factors. So you can't say that if I were to use your roadmap, I would get to your destination as well. The most I say when I'm like, I can do it or I did it, you can do it too, is more like, I learned how this works, like how personal finance operates. If I can learn it, you can learn it, because it really is just like, it's available and it's learnable. But I can't say to anybody, I was able to achieve this, you can too. Because I'm like, I'm also still on the journey. I'm like, I'm still figuring this out. And then every year I'm like, oh, we did another year. Okay, let's do another. It's impossible to tell anyone. And for me, it's difficult too, because I've been doing this for so long. Now people are, reaching out to me and looking up to me. It's like, oh, you've achieved this. Can you tell me your secrets? And I'm like, I don't have, there's no secrets. This is just like struggle, and just like not giving up. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable telling you how to succeed because I'm still figuring that out myself.
And also that everyone's definition of what success is, or what the end goal in one change or whatever is, like, everyone's definitions of that are also going to be different.
I know. Yeah. There's no, it's not, there's no such thing as cookie cutter. It's funny because I just, before this, was editing a podcast episode that will probably be released by now, but it was talking about how we need to get rid of this idea of cookie cutter personal finance advice because it's so harmful. And that's kind of what I felt you talked a lot about. We need to get rid of cookie cutter self-help advice. It's not like, take the inspiration or take some tidbits, but just like we say, personal finance is personal. Self-help, self-care, that is also personal too. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to really get more personal into it and not be like, this works. Everyone just meditate for 5 minutes a day and you'll be cured. Like, I can't say that that's going to work for everybody.
Well, or like, even people talk about like minimalism or decluttering. I'm like, we cannot be selling that as the solution to everybody. Like, we can definitely say, let's examine our spending habits. Like, that's a thing. And that's a very personal and more vague direction to take advice. But it's like, you can analyze your spending and see if you're happy with it. I cannot tell you that if you declutter, first of all, that it's going to do anything great for you. But I also can't say that that is the way to live, because not everyone is even in a position to do that. Right. So we cannot be just saying like, oh, just throw all your crap away and everything's great. Like, it does not. You're
like, what if I need that stuff? I know that was the biggest thing I couldn't stand from the Marie Kondo. I didn't read her book, but the TV show that was on, and like, she was like getting rid of all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, but like, what if you need that though? And like, sometimes you do need it. Like the books, wasn't that a big conversation? People were like, I'm not getting rid of my books. I'm like, fair enough. So I feel like that was the missing piece from that show. Because again, it was a TV show. So they had to make it a certain way. But I'm like, they should have had more conversations about, but this is personal. So it's okay if you want to keep something. It doesn't have to be black and white or, extremes. And that's my thing that I feel like I've been talking a lot more on the show. Like, I love having different people sharing their stories and information on the show, but I am so over the idea of extremes. You have to do an extreme in order to achieve something great. It's like, no, you don't. It could happen, but I'm not an extreme person. I've never done anything really extreme besides like quitting my job. But that wasn't like it wasn't like your story of, I went in the office and I just quit that day. I'm like, I was thinking about it for years. Right. And I made a plan and it was actually very strategic.
Well, and that is actually, I talk about that idea in the book, or just the general sense that the length of time it can take to even decide to opt out can actually be longer than anything related to the opt-out will take. Like, I have been in the same position where you think about something for 6 months, a year, longer. Like, I think about, even with not drinking, the first time I thought about that I'm not going to drink one day, I was probably like 20 or 21 years old. And I remember saying it to an ex-boyfriend at once. And so I must have been like 21 or 22 with him, and saying something like, yeah, like, I'm not going to drink when I'm older, I don't think. And he was just like, that's stupid. Everybody drinks. I I'm like,
And that's why
I
he's an
don't know.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, definitely an ex. Yeah. But I remember like having that thought, and yeah, and like even things definitely like around quitting my job to be self-employed. Even when you're self-employed, like sometimes it takes a long time to quit a client or something like that, right?
Oh my gosh. Or just change what your business is or what you're doing.
Yeah, it can take a very long time, and a lot of steps can go into it depending on what it is. Yeah, it's not and that felt so important to talk about too, like right up front, that the reason it is intentional, or that it all of this stuff, it feels like it's you're living a more intentional life, is because there is actual decision and like thought process that goes into it. So it is not just, oh, that sounds good, I'm going to make an impulsive decision. It is actually like sitting with your feelings, asking yourself how you feel about it. What are the steps or the things that you would have to do to get comfortable to make that choice? What are the fears you'd have to work past? How are you going to work through them if they come to life? Even if you're just giving yourself preliminary answers, because you're not going to know everything that's going to come up. But if you can give yourself like a preliminary answer and get to a place where you're like, okay, I now feel a little more ready than I feel scared. So I'm going to at least try this thing.
Yeah. And I actually kind of like the theme too that you talk a lot about is like, it's because again, a lot of like sensationalized self-help books are about doing something impulsive and dramatic to get this big kind of result. And those are exciting stories, but our lives generally don't look like that. It's important to take the time and to plan. So like, you know, you share in your story that you went to the UK and you didn't really book anything. And then you're like, oh, everything's kind of booked up. Maybe I should have planned a little bit more. But again, you kind of did what most people would do, like the eat, pray, love, go to this place and I'll figure it out there. That's the exciting part. And sometimes it literally just doesn't work that way because you need to book in advance because, you know, people are booking things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Or also, like for me, I just recognize like my mental health actually will not work like that.
it's very stressful to live. Let's go to, like, it sounds so exciting. Like, let's go here, let's go there. But I'm like, that's what me and Josh did when we went to Thailand, like, 7 years ago. And he was having a great time. I was stressed out because I felt like we never had a home base because we were literally a week here, a couple days here. And I'm just like, what if we don't have it? What if we don't find a place to stay? Where are we going to sleep? On the street? You know, it was not for me. I like the idea of settling in a place for, and that's something that now we're dreaming when this is a new world and there's a vaccine and it's safe to travel again. Yeah, like staying in a place for a month and enjoying that place instead of go, go, go.
Yeah, my fears around it. Like first, I think I just did fantasize about that. Like I wanted to be able to be the spontaneous person. Like I wanted to be able to do that. And then being there, I'm like, oh my God, I just don't sleep if I'm like that. Like, and I actually want to enjoy myself. And also because I'm not there to be a tourist. Typically, I don't travel typically to like see a bunch of things and cross them off a list. So, and because I like also it's important to just say at the moment anyways, I'm self-employed and so I can be anywhere. Why am I in a rush? I used to have one of my fears around it, around booking things was like, what if I don't like the place? Like, what if I don't like the city? And then it's like, okay, if I'm there for a month and I don't like it, okay. I'm sure I'll be fine. Literally, if I can find a half decent coffee shop, now we're really talking in like pre-pandemic days.
Yeah,
Like,
I know, right?
if I could find like a half decent coffee shop, I'm fine. Like I could deal with it for a month. But I used to have so much fear and like just around things like that, and so that's why I wasn't booking things. And then just thought I have to get to a place where I'm okay with just being somewhere for a month. Maybe I won't like it, and I'll be okay. Like, and I'll get to say I spent a month in this city. Cool. Okay, great.
And I think another thing that you kind of touched on, which I think is so important, is leaving room for some spontaneity, though. So you can plan, and that's important because, I mean, we always need a plan. But when you also leave, so like not planning things to the T, which is what I used to do for trips. We have to go here. Here's a spreadsheet of all the things. I have a guidebook. So stressful. It feels like work. It feels like you have to do this checklist. So when you get home, you're like, we went to all these things. Who gives a crap? It's like, leave some room. We want to go to one or two things. That's it. And then we'll leave, room. So if a friend's in the same city, we can meet them up. If we walk by something and we're like, oh, I didn't know this was here, let's check it out. It's really about rethinking how we have wired things. because of what we think that's how you're supposed to do this.
Yeah, well, and even the way you're describing that, I'm like, it's cool and interesting for me to reflect that that is also just the way that I live, that I don't have a crammed schedule. I always have space. But it's also the way that I budget because I don't do like strict budgeting the way that I used to and again, I preface this of like I've been talking or taking my finances seriously for like 10 years now. And so I don't budget strictly of like at the start of the month, here's my strict budget and here's what I'm trying to stick to and get mad at myself if I don't hit my numbers. But that's been 10 years in the making. But I now I track my net worth every month. And I just trust myself with my spending. Like I'll still look at things and I pay off cards like all throughout the month and like different stuff like that. But I just trust myself. But I look at my net worth and if something's gone off, then I can be like, hey, hold up.
Yeah, you're like, we're not up or we're down. What happened?
Yeah, like, oh, that's like a little more than I expected, or like it's a little lower than like, where did that come from? And then I'll like reassess from there. But that's been years in the making, and I'm so glad that I'm at that place with it.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like you did the work in advance and you've tried a lot of different things and figured out what works for you. But also it sounds like you've got, you do kind of the automatic saving, investing, like you're always putting away money for that kind of stuff. It's just when it comes to like the actual spending portion, you don't budget it to like only this amount on groceries, this amount on coffees. Cause I don't do that either. Cause like we don't spend our money that way. We're not always going to spend the exact same amount every month on specific things.
No, there are months that I buy things and there are months that I don't. Like I've had people ask if I still do a shopping ban. And I'm like, well, no.
No. You can't live in a shopping ban for years and years and years. Like that sounds like you're on a diet for years and years and years. It's eventually not going to work, okay? Like
yeah. So I'm like, that's not how I live. But there are probably months where I don't buy anything. And I just don't even think about it.
Oh, especially during this pandemic, there's been a few months where I'm like, wow, I spent like no money that month and I didn't notice. And
those are great months.
Yeah, those are great months. Usually I'm really busy with something, but that's also good too. It's taking your mind off the shopping. So we need to not have the shopping tabs always open on our browsers when we're doing something. It's not going to help anybody. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you did to kind of opt out of things that have improved your life, just so people can kind of get a sense of what they can expect in the book and maybe some things that they can think about. I know one thing, because I remember us having conversations about it, is you opting out of certain social media accounts. So like you're not on Facebook or Twitter. I think you're not on anything besides Instagram, right?
Yeah, I only use Instagram.
So what was that, which is so fascinating because I still have a love-hate relationship with Instagram. I just find I don't take photos. So maybe that's the problem. So that's something like, but I find it so fascinating and freeing whenever I do, like, I'm not going to check my phone today or not going to log into this account. I find it so nice. So tell me a little bit about that, because that does seem like a big, especially in our society, people can get judgmental being like, why are you not on this account? It doesn't make sense for your brand, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's been long enough now that I don't really hear about it ever. Or also things like, I remember just flat out telling my publisher, just like, no, I'll be on Instagram. Like I'll promote the book there. I'm not going on anything else. But so I used to use everything and like early blogging days, I had everything. And, but Facebook, I remember, I think it was like 2015 around there. I remember I took about like 8 or 10 months off Facebook. And so it was a total experiment of just like, what does this feel like? And I loved it. And so I did go back on it, but the whole time I was just like, I don't actually like using this. Like I always feel bad after. I spend way too much time on it and like nothing that good or even interesting happens here. And so at the beginning of 2018, I decided to stop using it. The timing of that was weird and it was not planned at all. It was actually just a couple of weeks after The Year of Less had come out. And I don't think I deleted it at first. I think I just stopped using it for a while. And then, I was just like, I don't need this. Like, I don't actually need this. I will say, I think for that and for Twitter, because Twitter was similar. I used Twitter way more than Facebook, I think. It was especially early blogging days, that's how we like all talked.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Right? Like that's where everyone talked. We had all kinds of conversations. It was very chatty and social, and it was great. And I had no intentions of leaving Twitter, but really noticed, I'll say in the last 4 years, which I think a lot of people can understand what the last 4 years held. The last 4 years, Twitter really changed. It became incredibly divisive and draining and just like mean. And even though I still felt like I was in a bit of a bubble, like it felt mostly okay, I just felt like every time I went on, all I saw was people picking fights with one another. And I just thought, why? Like, I'm not interested in the drama. Some people really enjoy it. I'm not interested. I don't want to follow people's drama. It's like a complete waste of time. So I just thought I'm going to get off of here. But it does feel important for me to say, like, there is certainly no question in my mind that the fact that I did use mostly Twitter, because with blogging, it was such a way for us all to be connecting in the beginning. There's certainly, like, because I did use it for years and we were so active and talking and connecting all the time, I definitely know that those things helped me build like friendships and connections that I wouldn't have had if I had just come out of nowhere. But that's also true, like, for blogging, right? Like, blogging for me was very similar. I responded to every comment that came through, and I built lots of connections through that. And so it's, yeah, like, it feels important to say, like, for someone who's just starting out, I don't know if you just start Twitter today, what that even looks like, because I haven't used it in 2 some odd years now. But I'm like, I can still see why it's in people's heads as like something that could be helpful. It did help me. It had absolutely helped me build friendships and connections. And then when it became too negative, it was just like, and I don't need to be here. Like, and no one should subject themselves to places that only feel toxic. Like, it's just not, why would you continually put yourself into a space that's unhealthy? And right now, for me, Instagram still feels okay. I'm actually also really liking this year that it's become a bit more educational, like, of a platform, and people sharing a lot more. And
yeah, it's less the I think the Instagram of a few years ago where people would just take photos of their outfits, or like, it was more, I feel like, materialistic. And again, it could be like how we all, and I think this is also changing, we're realizing we need to kind of curate who we're following and who's on our feeds. And so I did a big cleanup in the spring, being like, why am I following you? I don't enjoy your content. You don't make me feel good. I only want people who inspire me, who make me feel good. And that's why I actually, like, I'm more of a lurker quite honestly on Instagram. I'll share stories, but it's more like I like seeing actually the people's content. And that's because I was intentional on who I want to have in my view.
yeah. Yeah, no. So, like, Instagram right now still feels safe. And I'm like, who knows? In 2 years, I might be like, I'm not using anything. I was about to joke and say, like, maybe I'll go back on everything. I'm like, I actually don't think that's true.
Yeah. No, I feel like once you realize how great it is not being on those, you're like, why would you go back? Yeah. Yes, I totally get that.
But I did go back to blogging. And that's a different one.
Sorry, I haven't checked your blog.
No. I mean, like, why would you, though?
I don't know.
Why would you, though? I've only written a few posts so far, but I'm just, yeah, it's been, like, interesting to go back. But again, like, that's a safe space because I create that space.
It's on your terms, your platform. Exactly. Yeah, man. When did you start your blog initially? Was it 2010?
October 2010.
Wow.
10 years ago.
10 years ago. So much can change in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Including your net worth.
Including your net worth. So I want to kind of end things off just because, number one, everyone needs to grab your book because it's like such a good book. I was telling you, I can't remember if I was recording when I said this, but I'm like, it really relaxed me. Like, I'm just like, oh, with all the chaos going on in this world, it was nice to... It just felt like you were really in the moment. Like, I was in the moment reading it. You can just kind of think about what do you want in life, and you just kind of have a very nice way of kind of weaving it all together. And lots of like, I'm like, I have to go back and write some notes because there's lots of things I'm like, I need to think about that more. Like, because you just touch on so many different things, not just about your own path, whether it's your personal life or your career, but also like your relationships, your friendships. These are all things kind of like a budget where it doesn't stay, your life doesn't stay the same. You always have to kind of take some time to reassess. How are we doing? Do we need to change some things? Do we need to opt out or opt into some things? So I think that's so special. I forget the original point of that.
I think you were wrapping up.
Typically when I have guests on the show, I have questions, but I'm like, I just read your book. It's all fresh in my mind. We're friends. I just want to have a nice natural conversation. But I guess, yeah, what I just want to tell people to grab your book, but also I'm like, this is such a great, like, I guess opportunity or just a, I don't know, thing to kind of, to so many people I talk to, they're like, I want to make a change or I want this and that. I don't know where to start. This is a great way to kind of get those juices flowing to start thinking about the bigger picture things. Because I feel like it is actually still a good tie into just the world of personal finance. Because like what I tell everybody is like, it's not just about the numbers or setting goals and budgeting. It's like, what do you want in life? And then what are the tools that we can use to get there? And this is kind of that beginning part. I think everyone needs to take some time to really do that.
Okay. Well, I won't argue with that.
Yeah. Before I let you go, though, what is one thing that you'd like to kind of leave listeners with?
In a way, it kind of has nothing to do with the book. Honestly, just like, I hope you're taking really good care of yourself.
Oh, I like that.
I think this year has been a lot for everybody in very different ways. And some people are doing okay. Some people are freaking thriving in this, right? And no matter what it is, I hope that you're taking care of yourself. It's just been that kind of year. So
yeah. Self-care. We need to all really lean into that whole idea of self-care. And one last thing I'll kind of mention, because it just kind of popped into my mind. I feel like you talked about in the book how sometimes people, like, this is totally me, think of self-care or just like taking time for yourself or doing things that are slow as laziness, or you're not being productive, because we're also in this world that has hustle culture in our faces all the time. It's actually so important to take that, to have that space, to take that breath and let it kind of marinate. We can't just be on autopilot or just like go, go, go at all times. You can't. It's not going to work out for you.
No. It makes me think, actually, I'll just share like the last sort of ritual or thing that shifted for me this year. First of all, 2020, I've done more therapy this year than I've ever done in my life.
Me too.
like combined, I've done more this year. But something that I added after the summer, because I noticed that even with therapy, what I was doing was, it was just like part of my schedule that day. Right. So it's like, well, I've got this therapy, this. And so starting in September, I just decided to make it so that after therapy, the rest of the day is a day off.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And what a freaking game changer. First of all, because the depths that I go to in therapy, it like immediately shifted. And the work that I'm doing is so much deeper because I have capacity not only to cry a lot and probably be a bit more exhausted after, which I am, but also just a game changer in terms of, like you're saying, like creating space, and to, even if it's only that like half a day or whatever, like I typically have therapy in the afternoon, to take the rest of that day off is just like my time to, I'll go for a walk, have a bath, read a book, talk to a friend, like I'll turn on music and dance, like just like do lighter things. It's been huge this year, and it is really important. I think 2020 has forced us to sit still, which can be very disruptive, and also hard if you're feeling feelings for the first time, really. And that's where I think, like when I say taking care of yourself, it's because this year is a lot. There's a lot happening. So.
There's a lot happening. Yeah. Well, things can only go up. Like at what point, and if you were to consider the year 2020 as part of the kind of hiking, visual, what part do you feel like it would be at? Because in my mind, it's like we're at the bottom. We're going to only go up from here.
I think we're at the base.
Okay, good.
I do. And so the base of it being, we are, and I say that also because I'm like, it could sound scary to people because then it sounds like you're just at the beginning of a very long haul. But I see it more as like the base is the period, like you're really sitting and questioning And then so like 2021, maybe you'll start taking first steps towards something a little bit different. And it's not that everything is going to change magically overnight, but that you'll hopefully we'll all be able to collectively like take some steps towards something different.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a nice note to end this off on. Thanks so much for being a guest on the show once again, Cait. Also, since we mentioned your Instagram, where can people find you on the gram?
Oh, just at Cait Flanders.
Oh, that's easy. And then, yeah, your website's just caitflanders.com. Okay,
Yeah.
easy peasy. Awesome. And of course, the book, I feel like not once have I said the name of the book. I'm obviously going to say it in the intro, but it's Adventures in Opting Out. And what is the subtitle for it?
A field guide to leading an intentional life.
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you and talk again.
Okay, so that was episode 255 with Cait Flanders. Make sure to check her out at caitflanders.com and follow her on Instagram at Cait Flanders. And grab, copies of both her books. Adventures in Opting Out is her new book, and her first book is The Year of Less. Both highly recommended books by me. Loved them. Highly recommend. Great Christmas presents. And of course, I'm giving away copies to her books. So many more books. I'm going to share more details about that. I'm going to share some very important announcements in just a hot sec. Just want to share a few words about this episode's sponsor. This episode of the Mo Money Podcast is supported by Passive. Are you tired of spending time on spreadsheets to manage and keep track of your investments? Passive can help you invest, rebalance, and keep track of your account so you can get rid of your spreadsheets. Once you set up a portfolio, Passive will do all the calculations to keep it balanced, send you notifications when your portfolio needs attention, and you can even place your trades across multiple accounts at the click of a button. Another bonus, Passive is free to all Questrade clients. To learn more about how it all works and to sign up for an account, visit passive.com/momoney. And that's spelled PASSIV. Once again, to learn more about how Passive can help lighten your load as a DIY investor, visit passive.com/momoney. Okay, first and foremost, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, if you want to find out all the other episodes she's been on this show, make sure to go to jessicamorehouse.com/255. If you want to find out the show notes for any episode, which include links and important information about that episode, just go to jessicamorehouse.com/ whatever the number of the episode, or you can find them all at jessicamorehouse.com/podcast. That's where you can find all of that. Like I teased, giving away her book, Adventures in Opting Out. So if you go to jessicamorehouse.com/contest, again, the link will be in the show notes. You'll see I'm giving away her book and a bunch of other books. Basically, any author that has been on this show in this season of the podcast, giving away their books. So you can enter for all of them. And then I'll be mailing them out. I'll probably be mailing them out in January, quite honestly, because this podcast is going up until crazily like December 23rd. So I've got a few more episodes to go. So get ready for that. So that's exciting. So as I kind of mentioned-ish, I've got some big things, big changes. I feel like this happens every freaking December. I just make some really drastic changes. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because my work kind of slows down, so I have a few, moments to breathe and think and reassess. And so one of the things I have been thinking about doing for the longest time, but actually kind of, got the, I don't know, balls to do was yesterday, or I'm recording this on Tuesday. Monday is when I kind of got the idea. I'm like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to do it. And so I announced in my Facebook group, the Money Life Balance Community, that I've had since February 2016. That's insane. Almost 5 years I've had this Facebook group. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But also it's just for the direction I see my business, it just doesn't fit anymore. And I honestly feel like I've kind of not been as present in the group as I could be, just because I'm doing other things. I have other projects that I want to focus more on. So I've decided to close down the group. Now, some people have, when I would do this, it would be the end of December. So the reason, kind of is just like, I just kind of want to move on to the next chapter. And so it kind of feels right timing for me to just close this chapter. So people have kind of asked if this, group could continue without me. So I'm kind of looking into what that may look like. So I'll let you know, but just know that I will no longer be kind of the host of this Facebook group as of the new year. Basically, it's just time for me to kind of do something new. So I know lots of people are sad about that, because it is like I've honestly, and I don't think most people realize this, I really have taken a lot of time and energy in like curating this group to be unlike other Facebook groups. I mean, if I want this to be a group that has like 10,000 or more members, I could have easily done that. But I didn't want it to be just a group with a ton of people and not a real clear vision and focus. So I was very intentional in who I actually let into the group. It was all about positivity, no judgment, helping each other, no self-promotion, because that grinds my gears when someone wants to get into the group and just talk about their new whatever. It's like, listen, I don't even self-promote in this group. Okay. So let's not do that. But as much as it's been so great to, grow this group to about 2,600 members over the past 5 years, it's just time for me to say goodbye and hand off the reins possibly to someone else, or just shut it down completely. We'll see what happens. So in case you're like, I was thinking about joining, you can still join. I'll let you in. But I just don't know what the future of it will be. But I won't be part of it. So just so you know. But with that said, I highly recommend that you join my email list. That is how you kind of stay in touch with me and all the things that I do. Just go to jessicamorehouse.com/subscribe to find more info about that. That will be very helpful. Some other important announcements. So, as I mentioned on a few other episodes, I am closing the doors on my 2 online courses, Fix Your Finances Masterclass and Investing Foundations for Canadians. And actually, as of now, the doors are closed. They're done. You cannot sign up anymore. The reason is I am revamping them to relaunch in January. And I'm currently working on the investing course first, and then I will work on the kind of financial planning course second. And I'm very excited. I'm just like having so much fun. It's going to be so great. So you'll find out more information again if you are on my email list first. That's who I kind of talk to first about these things. But again, I'll share them on social media when both courses are live. With that said, I'm not, and I feel like I've mentioned this as well, I'm not taking on any new financial counseling clients, and I honestly don't know if I ever will exactly. My kind of vision is to create this financial planning program. So it's not just a course, but it's more of a program that includes one-on-ones with me. But it's just something I'm slowly working on. But yeah, right now and for the foreseeable future, I'm not taking on any new clients. That being said, because I get emails and messages all the time about this, if you are looking for, fee-only financial planner and you want someone right now, and maybe the course isn't a good fit for you, cool. Just go to jessicamorehouse.com/recommendations. I have a ton of fee-only planners I've listed there. They are for Canadians only. But if you're American, I'm sure I can, figure out some sort of recommendation for you, or some, there's probably a place I can point you to, but I mainly deal with Canadians. So you can find more information there. Let's see, what else do I have going on? Pretty much, yeah, I'm just going to be spending the rest of this month putting out the last episodes of this podcast of season 11, working on updating these courses. And I'm going to take a good week completely off, not completely off, because obviously the last podcast episode is the 23rd. Well, I guess it's like after the 23rd, then a week after that, I'll take a full week off, because I never really do that, and just like enjoy the holidays a little bit. That's what I'm really, really looking forward to. I guess that's it. I feel like those are kind of the only huge announcements for the moment. I will have some more, but again, get on my email list and you'll find out first, because some things pop up and I don't mention them on the show because of timing. Because again, I record these the intro and outros sometimes the day before I release the episode, but sometimes a week or two. So it really kind of depends. All right, that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'll be back next week, next Wednesday, with a fresh new episode. And have a good rest of your week. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you soon.